gold could provide you some safety, is not a good asset for people that they like risky type of investments. Cryptocurrencies are much more risky than stocks. Every time people are hearing offers about very high rates of return, they should be very suspicious and ask why, ask for more details.
How searches can affect certain prices.
There is an old saying that negative news travel very fast. Now, negative news will travel in seconds.
Can big data save lives? Доколку ви се допаѓа што го врти светот, стиснете subscribe и like. Некој од вас оваа сезона ќе може да се запознае со еден од омилените говорници и ќе добие авионски билет за некоја европска дестинација. Целта на предизвикот е да продолжиме да ги шириме видиците и надвор од дигиталниот свет. So, Professor Theodore Panagiotidis, what makes the world go round?
Thanks a lot for the invitation, and it's really great to be here. The desire of people to look for a better life.
Real estate or gold?
Real estate.
Okay. Doing research or lecturing?
Both.
Okay. And big data or focus groups?
Big data.
Of course, this is your area of expertise, big data, but when we say big data, for a lot of people it's abstract. But what you do is you find some area and you research it by getting a lot of information from everything and telling us the story about it. One of the topics you have researched is the housing and property markets that are very interestingly changing in both of our countries. They're constantly rising. So what moves the prices up when we're talking about housing, properties, buying a flat, buying a home?
The housing market is probably the most important issue for a household, either for an individual, for a family. Is the most important asset that we have. In Europe overall, the housing represents the most important aspect of our portfolio. So if a family or a household has a total wealth, the vast majority of this total wealth is coming from the house they own. So the house is something that is very important. It has been. At this point, I would like to stress that the recent COVID pandemic demonstrated the importance of the house, because you might recall that we spent a lot of time in our flats during the pandemic.
Yes, we did.
During the pandemic, and I think for most of the people this was a unique moment that they realized how important their house is. In many countries, housing prices going up, and this is obviously a complicated phenomenon. There is not just one answer, there are many answers. For South Europe and for also our countries, we need to stress some specific issues that are very important. One is related with tourism and Airbnb, and I will later on, maybe we can discuss about this in more detail. The second is the demographics and the change in the composition of the families and the fact that people are having less children than they used to have in the past.
So they need smaller apartments.
So exactly as the number of children that a typical family would have is going down, then people would be looking for smaller flats.
And this raises the salaries for smaller flats?
This would basically require some renovation in bigger flats, because there is a tendency in many places, you might know, that when there is a big property, they usually split it
Yes.
in order to increase the returns they are getting. Now, tourism and Airbnb also play an important role in the housing market. So if you have an area that the airport is expanding, that means more people are coming. More people are coming requires housing for them. And because hotels require a lot of time to be built, new hotels, the easy solution is to expand the Airbnb supply in a specific city.
What's the situation in Greece in this aspect? Are some areas becoming more interesting for Airbnb? We have examples for some Macedonian neighborhoods, especially in Skopje, in the city center. They are becoming very interesting for Airbnb. The prices are rising very rapidly. You can make 3 times more money renting your apartment for 20 days than renting it for 1 month to somebody.
Exactly. So the rates of return for individuals that are using Airbnb to rent their houses tend to be significantly higher. In Athens, there is a neighborhood which is famous now for the Airbnb, the fact that a lot of flats there are Airbnb. It's called Koukaki. It's next to the archaeological museum, and given its proximity to the center, many flats in this area have become Airbnb. It's like a huge Airbnb neighborhood. In Thessaloniki is also there are many Airbnb properties basically in the center. Now, Airbnb, what it does is basically many flats, especially in the center of a city, are transformed into Airbnb properties, and this usually pushes people to find property in the neighborhoods outside the center and increase prices, because people would get high returns in the center by renting to Airbnb. They will search for a new property in the neighborhood, and these two powers simultaneously increase house prices. And the negative outcome here is that people with relatively lower wages would have even more difficulties in buying a house. The airport and the development of the airport makes the whole situation more complicated, because the more tourists you get, the more demand for Airbnb, and the house prices tend to go up.
You have done research in other countries, not just our countries, not just the Balkans. We always like to believe we have very unique problems, but the differences and the rise of property everywhere, it's very apparent, even in the US, in the UK. What have you seen that was different there from here, or maybe there, maybe we can learn from their mistakes?
Yeah, that's a very good question. People tend to think that the problems they have are unique, but in fact, the rising, the tendency of housing prices to go up is something we observe everywhere in Europe, with unprecedented speeds, and the housing affordability is something that governments and policymakers need to rethink very, very carefully, because house prices tend to go up, and we need to think of ways in order to make housing affordable to everybody in the society. Because if we continue like this, there are going to be significant proportions of the society that they would not have the ability to buy a house ever in their lifetime.
Yes, and this is becoming a big thing, especially on the internet, for millennials and for Generation Z. They're constantly complaining about the fact that their parents could buy an apartment, but if they were not left an apartment from their parents, or any type of housing, a house or something else, they have much smaller ability to buy this house. Yes, the wages have risen from the times when our parents have bought their home. However, it is very hard for younger people to buy a home, and I think that this is also affecting what we discussed before, the fact that families are shrinking. A lot of people are waiting to have much more stable home to sort of form a family. Do you think that this will ever shift, or can the country's governments do anything to sort of support this aspect? Because I do think it affects young people.
Young people complain about this, and I think they are right.
You complain about a lot of things. I'm not one of them, but sort of have been through that process.
I think they are right to complain because the opportunity to own a house is something that we cannot really deny from the entire generation. So this is something that not only governments and policymakers, but the whole society should think about this in order not to exclude the new generation from the possibility of buying a house. Let me start by saying, earlier you asked me real estate or gold, and I replied real estate, but now it's a good opportunity to explain why. Usually housing is an asset that never loses its value. There will be periods that the increases in prices are not going to be that high, but reduction in house prices are very rare in a history of any country, very rare.
Something really scary needs to happen.
You need to have a major crisis, you need to have a war or something like that. In peacetime, you might observe some reductions, but they are usually very limited. So, from the perspective of an individual or a household or a family, investing in a house is a very safe investment. Is in fact the safest and best investment an individual, a household, a family can do. So, whether there is a way of observing lower housing prices, the short, simplistic answer is no. Now, whether the government can do anything about this, the answer is yes, they can do many things, and I can mention some of them. Number one is supply. So, a house has demand and supply. We need to remember the supply. So, allowing new flats to be built is something very, very important.
But for our example, a lot of flats are being allowed to be built. We don't have enough streets to sort of support this expanding of flats. There are a lot of empty flats that we have. The last time we checked, it was about over 30,000 empty flats where nobody lives, and still the prices are going up. They're not affecting it in the way that, frankly, I believe they would affect it.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Remember that when you build new flats, the important thing is to build it in a pace that is going to outperform demand. Okay. So if demand is for 200 flats and you build 100 new flats, it's not enough. Maybe you need to build more. The second issue you mentioned are empty flats, or I need to add here, flats that need renovation and people don't want to move there. So a government there can do at least two things. The first one is if a flat is empty and people are not using it, then you can tax it. So people will not have the incentive to to leave it empty.
I think some businessmen were happy about our conversation up until now.
And the second thing is, there are many flats that were built many, many years ago, and they need renovation.
Yes.
So if the government proposes measures to encourage people to renovate their flat and bring them back to the market, that is going to ease the pressure from the housing market.
Yes.
You mentioned one more word earlier on that I would like to highlight. You said we don't have enough roads. Now, the infrastructure is related very closely to the housing market. So building flats is not enough. You need the infrastructure so people can basically buy a flat, not necessarily in the center, but in a neighborhood or a nearby village.
Yes.
So having the opportunity to go to their work not only by car, but by other public transport is very important.
We are also hoping for a train forever, but it has been forever, and the public transportation in the country has not shifted, and I do believe that's why the prices in the city center are extremely high, even though it is not the best place to have a family, but to travel, sometimes it can be a challenge for people, especially if you don't drive a car, or if you don't have a car.
So investing in public transportation in big cities is very, very important for housing, because it would allow people to find a cheaper house or a cheaper flat slightly outside the city if they have the way of commuting to their work. That would allow them to find a cheaper flat outside. So investing,
and it will push the other prices maybe to not grow as rapidly.
Exactly. So building a tram system or a bus system or whatever transportation means chosen by the government would ease the pressure that you're going to have in the housing market.
Are there any good examples in the world where they did this and now the situation is improving, or it's not worsening?
Improving in the sense that you observe lower housing prices, as I said earlier, it's very difficult. But we do know that, for example, in Germany has a very extensive train system, and people can use the train to work, to commute to their work, and they can live in one village and they can work in another one. So this extensive train system allows not cheap houses but affordable houses.
Yes.
Because the houses, you need to consider that the housing is relevant to the salary. So that's why we need to talk about housing affordability. This is when there is a lot of investment in public infrastructure. Usually we tend to observe higher housing prices around the areas that a metro system, for example, is introduced. So this was the experience in Athens, where housing prices increased, especially in the areas around the metro system. In a month's time in Thessaloniki, there are going to be a new underground operating from the last day of November.
How long did it take them to make this underground?
Yeah, the underground started some years ago, something around 2006, 2007. It took a lot of time for the project to be completed. This was related to companies that went bankrupt. There was many issues that were related to the archaeological excavation that were happening in the same time. We are still waiting to see the outcome, which we're going to see in the coming weeks.
That's nice for you.
But the important thing that we should stress is that the houses around stations tend to increase a lot. House prices around underground stations. And
do you think that if we think this way, we can sort of not predict, but think smart when buying a house? Because maybe at this point, since you know where the metro is going to go, you know where the stations are going to be, or nearby what places the metro will go. And do you think it's a smart move to buy a house there, maybe? I mean, from taking big data and making a personal decision.
If you can predict it before everybody knows, maybe that's a good idea. Once once this information is shared with everybody, then obviously this is going to be reflected in the price of the neighborhood. But at this point in time, I think we need to stress again that the role of the government in this type of issues are very important. So planning, allowing new flats to be built, and providing additional support for families that cannot buy a flat or a house. Social housing was the term that people were using in the previous decade. So the government would build flats and houses, and they would give it to families and individuals in need. And this is something that was abandoned in many countries the last years, but probably it's something that we need to reconsider. The UK is a typical example of council houses, as they were calling them. They were building them in the 60s and the 70s.
Yes, we also had social flats that were, and houses that were given to families that didn't own a house or a flat.
Yeah. So the issue of housing, unfortunately, is going to remain very important. There are no indications that prices are going to go down. There are most of the evidence we have seen is that the prices are going to continue, and we need some action in order to make this as controllable as possible.
Yes, even though it's not completely controllable. Now buying, we started talking about houses and homes, but when we're talking about making an investment, not everybody can afford to buy a house or a home, and people are considering other types of investments for their savings or some extra money that they make. First of all, I would like to say that it's very important to not lend money to invest, because some people here are doing these types of, making these types of decisions to invest, especially in some types of fast money-making machines. I personally do not believe this is possible, but also if you take money and lend money for this, you need to know the risk that you might lose those money. And but when it comes to your research, you have done some research on Bitcoin, some research on investing in gold, some research on, I don't know if you have research on investing in companies or buying, you know, shares, small parts of that company. What do you think might be a safer approach? Not better, because some people like risk and they will invest their money knowing that it is risky, but what do you think it's a safer approach when it comes to investments of the personal savings, other than a bank?
I think this question is very important for people who are listening. We have done a lot of research on cryptocurrencies generally, not only Bitcoin, but other cryptocurrencies. One of the things we should say very clearly is that these assets are very risky assets. When we say very risky asset, we mean that the possibility of somebody losing their savings is very, very high. So we have seen in the past the price of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies fluctuating within the day of up to 70%. So sometimes numbers need to be very clear to the audience. When we say somebody is going to lose that amount of money, that means that if you invest 100 euros in one day, the next day you have only 30 euros.
Yes.
And the possibility of losing your savings is very, very big. So Bitcoin, cryptocurrency markets are not for everybody. This is a very, very risky investment, and for most of the people, the reasonable and wise advice is to stay away from it. If you are interested and you're passionate about these things, then make sure that you basically use only a very, very small proportion of your portfolio. So just if you like this type of things and you do it as a hobby, maybe you can invest a very small amount of money that you wouldn't really mind if you lose all of them.
Some use the term play with those money.
Exactly, I was planning to use exactly the same word. If you like playing with this, with the crypto market, the cryptocurrency market and Bitcoin, make sure that you are going to play with very, very small amounts.
That you can afford to lose.
That you can afford to lose. So if you do well, you are going to be happy, but there is a very big probability that you're going to lose everything. So the crypto market is very, very risky. The gold market remains something very stable when there are crises and issues, either geopolitical risk or economic recessions.
Because you're buying a resource, you're buying gold.
But its importance seems to be decreasing over the years. If we are lucky enough to have stability and avoid major confrontations, we are going to be in the same situation. We wouldn't need to discuss about gold. If a country has a stable currency, a stable monetary policy, then gold would not be as important as it was many, many decades ago, because gold was usually seen by people as a very, very safe asset. This safe asset usually its price does not increase too much.
Yes.
But in the same time is rigid, so its price is not decreasing in the same time.
Yes.
So gold could provide you some safety, is not a good asset for people that they like risky type of investments, but is something that is relatively safe.
And what about stocks?
Stocks.
Do you have an opinion on this, or have you followed some movements of the stocks?
Well, about stocks, I think it's a good idea to avoid generalization, in the sense that there might be some companies that are very dynamic and they are going to grow, others that are not so much. We can say that cryptocurrencies are much more risky than stocks. And if I have to use a generalization about stocks, I would discriminate stocks that are coming from companies that are productive, companies that they actually produce something.
Something, okay.
Relatively to stocks from companies that are not producing, let's say, a good or a specific...
maybe
services, yes. So we have seen in the past in economies like the US that stocks are providing on average high returns. Not all stocks, but many stocks are providing high returns. And you can have many examples here like Tesla, Apple, etc., which they have seen a phenomenal growth. But this is not for all stocks. This is not for all stocks. Again, for people that they want to invest their money, stocks are not as risky as the crypto market, but they are more risky than investing in a house.
Yes.
So if we have to rank them based on safety, house is number one, stock could be number two, and third, very, very risky, is the crypto market.
Yes. This is an interesting rating. I don't think that we've had all in one discussion, because usually we're seeing people that are very excited about stocks or very excited about investing in cryptocurrencies and so on and so forward. I think when you set portfolio, it's very important for people to understand that most of the economists suggest that you don't put all of your sort of eggs in one basket, but to if you decide to do something with your savings, first of all, do it with money you can lose, and then decide when you're decide to invest in different things, just a little bit of money here, a little bit of money there, to make sure that if something goes down, hopefully something else saves you.
And we need to encourage people to avoid exaggerations.
Yes.
So there is a concept which your audience might be familiar with, which is financial literacy. When we say financial literacy, we mean whether people understand that making huge profits in very limited amount of time usually is impossible and usually implies something that is similar to a scam. You know that there were pyramids in the past.
There are still pyramids.
That collapsed and left many, many people without any of their savings that they have collected over many, many years.
There was this pyramid scheme called Conti. A lot of people put their money in this. It's not a company. They sort of were trading money. They were investing in it, and then they were asked to watch and rate a movie or a commercial, and then get very high returns. So in the beginning of the pyramid scheme, those that started got some money back, and people started to believe this scheme. But then when the base became too big and people started to looking for their money back, because they, according to this platform, they have earned more and more money, it collapsed, because it's not based on something that makes money that you can then return to the people. So there was a scam, a pyramid scam, just a few weeks ago, and I think maybe 15,000 people were part of this scam. So when we're talking about financial literacy, we're talking about these people knowing they can be scammed, people knowing what's out there on the internet. But when we're looking for information about finances, about companies, and so on, so forward, what should they look for to educate a little bit here?
No, that's a very important thing. One of the first pyramids, financial pyramids, that has been observed, and we know it from the history, is a scheme that was called the Ponzi scheme.
The Ponzi scheme, yes, I know.
Yeah, this was about a century ago in the US, that was based on a very simple principle that you are looking for the next guy, for the next person to participate in the pyramid. But when the last fool disappears, as we say, when you cannot really add more people in this base, then everything collapses.
Because everybody puts their money there, and you're taking your money from the last investment.
And you're going to take the money from the next person that is going to participate. If there is no next person, that's why this is similar to what we call the last fool theory. If there is no next person, then you're going to lose all your money.
Yes. And they usually shift to the same thing, just call it something else.
Yeah. And there are many different ways of advertising or selling this type of schemes. But the Ponzi experience in the US, this was as I said, a century ago, made the US to have a very strict legislation about this type of schemes. And the fact that the financial system needs to be very, very well, they need to be monitored by the authorities, so they would not allow this type of schemes to become big, so they stop them as early as possible.
Yes. And how can we check? Is there a way to check if this information about a certain investment that you're asked to do is true or false? Do we search other sources? Do we search other similar schemes on the internet? For example, this one was called Conti, but maybe there is another one that's called something else. How do we sort of try to foresee this?
Yeah, so the responsibility here is dual. You have a responsibility from my side as an investor to see where I'm going to put my savings, but there is also responsibility from the government and the authorities' perspective. They have to put a stop to this type of things as early as possible. Now, if I was a consumer that was given the opportunity to invest somewhere and get a very high return, I would do at least two things. The first one is I would ask, why do you provide such a high rate of return? Why I cannot get this rate of return from my bank?
Yes.
Why is this the case? I need an explanation why you provide a high rate of return when in the same time my bank would give me only 1 or 2%.
Where does the money come from?
Why
Right?
this very high rate of return? I would be very suspicious when I'm offered very high rates of return.
Yes.
The second thing I would do,
It is unbelievable.
I would go to the bank and ask, why these people are offering me this?
Yeah.
Why? People need to remember that risk and return have a positive relationship. So if you want to get high return, then you pay a price for this, and the price you pay is high risk.
Yes, yes.
So every time people are hearing offers about very high rates of return, they should be very suspicious and ask why, ask for more details, check it, double check it, look for information on the internet, and ask their bank why this is on offer.
Probably if something is too good to be true or unbelievable, it is not to believe, not to be believed, because on the internet it's not just when it comes to finances, but when it comes to anything, you can be fooled. And when you see an information that's hard to believe in, you're going to, I don't know, invest $100 and get $100,000 back or something like that. It's a bit strange.
Yeah.
All your financial problems will be fixed within 2 weeks. It's hard to believe, and probably might be untrue.
Yeah, and usually this is the case.
Yes.
Usually this case, and the region has experienced pyramids and the subsequent social issues that are coming from the collapse of pyramids. You know that in the neighboring Albania there was a big social unrest when some pyramids collapsed some years ago, and people should be very careful and suspicious when they were offered this type of things.
Yes, I completely agree on this one, and I think that they should be suspicious, they should look for more information, and we are learning, sadly, rather than being taught in schools. I think that I don't usually blame the people, because countries like ours, where you have some of the lowest level in education and a lot of the young people and kids have very low overall literacy rates, we cannot expect them to be equipped to sort of see the scam. And also, when you combine the low level of education with the lower incomes compared to the prices, you get the perfect, place to sort of send a pyramid scheme or any type of other disinformation, especially financial frauds and something like that.
Financial literacy is a very important aspect for the young generation and the older generation, is to learn how to check and double check when this type of offers are proposed, and you would need also to train young people to how to avoid all these scams.
Have you done some type of research where you have used social media data to sort of explain some kind of phenomenon? How does information move through social media?
Yeah. So the biggest platform of data that we can have nowadays is social media, because this is where people interact. People interact in social media in different ways. Obviously, there is heterogeneity when it comes to generations. You know, the Instagram is doing something different, Twitter, X is doing something else, Facebook is doing something else. So
but everybody is gathering data.
But so social media have data because this is where people interact.
Yeah.
Now, about financial news, at least in the past, Twitter, which is now called X, was the main platform for spreading financial news. So what we did with colleagues some years ago is to look at how the crisis of the Greek debt was reflected on the social media. So we went to the bond markets, where in the bond markets what you see determining is the cost of serving a specific debt. So how much
information
how expensive is for a country to service its debt. We look at traditional financial economic variables, but on top of that, we look at the intensity of the discussion on Twitter, X, about this specific issue.
You were looking for a word?
We were looking for
a keyword.
A specific keyword on Twitter and X, and this specific keyword was Grexit, which was dominant now 8 years ago or 9 years ago on X, on the X platform, Twitter. So we were looking for this specific keyword across countries and on a daily basis. So we want to see whether the intensity of the discussion on Twitter increased the pressure that the Greek bonds were facing on the financial markets. What we did observe is that the more people were talking about this, the more was the pressure that the bonds were having in the financial market. So it was the more people were discussing about this, the more expensive was for a country to borrow money to service its debt.
We know that information affects finances. It is always like this. But with social media, the game changes even more. You can raise the price of something and probably even the prices of bonds.
One of the important issues that you probably know better than anybody is fake news. Because when there are fake news, some people might think that, you know, this is without any cost. But we've seen in the past that fake news have an important cost.
Big cost.
There are tweets that were completely untrue in the past, that had a significant effect on the financial markets.
Can you give an example?
For the short period of time that you need for a journalist to make sure that this is fake news, this amount of time, this news had a significant effect on the financial market. So there were cases that we did observe a big drop in stock market as a result of fake news.
We had the same.
We have seen this at least twice in the US.
We had an example here where there was this information spread by a journalist that the price, that the rate of the dinar will go down compared to, for example, euro or dinars, and a lot of people were taking their money out of the banks, and it cost the national bank a serious amount of money to stabilize it and to keep the price where it is, because we have a pretty stable currency.
So we've seen at least twice in the past tweets about either the health of a politician or issues that can create uncertainty that have a real effect on the stock market, where in fact the news were completely fake. So what we want to see is whether, with Twitter and X, discussion is global. There is no such a thing as a local discussion. If you want to say something about an economy, a country, the discussion is global. There are no local discussions anymore, and if there is a discussion about a specific issue in one country, in a matter of minutes, this discussion will move to all the other countries, and you're going to see real effects of this discussion.
In your visualization that you showed in the lecture before we were filming, you showed that it started in Greece, then moved to the UK, then moved to whole Europe, then moved to the US, and moved to the whole world.
Yeah.
That was very interesting for me to see, so how information travels. You would think that somebody closer to Greece would be more interested, but no, after it went to the UK, that's when it went back to Europe.
In our case, we saw that the discussion was mainly in Germany, Netherlands, and the UK, because this is where the big financial markets is.
Yes.
Obviously, these tweets are read by everybody, and this spread very, very quickly everywhere. And the same thing happened in the US simultaneously. Once there is a crisis and once the discussion starts, this is going to affect everybody.
Yes.
There is an old saying that says that negative news travel very fast. And this was true in the past days, many years ago. Now, negative news will travel in seconds.
Yes. And also, it was very fun for me to see that how searches can affect certain prices. You did research on this too, how Google searches affect the price of oil, probably of other things as well.
Yeah. One of the things that we do is we look at how people searches, what we search on Google are affecting specific prices. This is a good moment to say that this also includes housing market.
Yes.
So if people start searching for a house in a specific neighborhood, you can basically quantify this through Google and see what are the preferences of people, which neighborhood they prefer, which they prefer less, etc., etc.
And Google knows more about you than anybody else.
Yes, Google knows more about us than anybody else. We did some search about oil as well, and now the current news about what is happening in the Middle East is also a very good opportunity to remind the people who are listening that the price of oil depends very much on the stability on the Middle East. There is tension right now there, and this could affect oil prices. Now, oil is a very important commodity because it affects the prices of almost everything.
Yes.
It affects how much we pay to commute from one point to the other. It affects the price of all the goods we buy.
Because of the transportation prices.
Because the transportation cost is there. It affects services as well. That's why in the past, an oil price shock had a very significant negative effects in the economy. We know this from all the oil price shocks that were observed in an economy even from the 70s. The first oil shock of 73 had a very important negative effects in all Western economies. What we did is we also saw that when there are issues related to oil, people also are engaged in these searches on Google on oil, and we found that by looking at Google searches on oil, you can basically see when you should expect oil prices to go up.
Okay.
If I have to say it in one sentence, I would say the more people search about oil, the more likely it is that prices of oil will go up.
Yes, and this is data that you have because Google is giving some parts of its data to researchers to be able to do this kind of research. However, there are platforms that can help us predict many other things. We were talking about jobs, for example. Now everybody is talking about how the job market will change, especially with the appearance of artificial intelligence. What types of jobs will companies be looking for, and so on and so forward. And there is a platform that can give us this type of data. There is probably a platform that can predict where you can find a job or what types of job will be required, what types of job are becoming less and less interesting for companies because probably they're already replacing part of their teams with AI programs. So my question here is, which platform can provide us with this type of data, and what types of data does this platform have?
Yeah, so as probably our younger listeners know, LinkedIn is probably one of the most important platforms for engaging with potential employers. I tend to encourage my students to invest time on their LinkedIn account. It's very important. It's very important because even if you don't look for a job, employers tend to offer jobs based on the skills and the abilities that people seem to have on their LinkedIn account. So this is a good opportunity to encourage people that are looking to improve their place in the labor market to invest some time on having a professional LinkedIn account. Now, LinkedIn can identify trends of what is happening in the labor market. Obviously, it's very difficult for a researcher to find this type of data. But it looks like, at this point in time at least, that LinkedIn is emerging as the main way an employer can interact with the potential employees. Now, the artificial intelligence you mentioned earlier is a very important issue. I understand that many people are going to feel insecure about the changes that are coming. Yes. And sometimes the changes are here, we just haven't realized that they are there. Now, we need to say that big changes in the labor markets have happened in the past. The Industrial Revolution is probably one of the biggest examples of people having to change, the nature of their work had to change because of technology. In this sense, artificial intelligence is something similar. What we do, it would probably is going to change because of the new technologies that are available. One of the things that we should do is actually engage with the new technology rather than fear new technology. So ChatGPT is a very useful tool. If you know what you want to do, it can help you.
Do you encourage your students to use ChatGPT?
I encourage my students to use ChatGPT when they know what they want to do. If they know what they want to do, it can help you. If you are looking for doing something without any effort, then it's not a very good friend, ChatGPT. It's exactly the same as the discussion we had earlier with the pyramids.
Yes.
If you are looking for making money in a very short period of time and a lot of money, it's a very bad strategy. For students, if you want to do a coursework without reading, ChatGPT is not helping you. ChatGPT is going to destroy you because you are going to lose important knowledge. ChatGPT can help you in a short period of time get additional knowledge, but you need to invest time and know what you're looking for. The ChatGPT is not replacing brain and studying.
Yet.
It's helping.
Yes.
It's helping you study more. So it's a useful tool once you know how to use it. If you know how to use it, artificial intelligence can help you.
I think it's the same with any types of new technology, or even if you take money, you can do good things with it or you can do bad things with it. You can invest them poorly or gamble, or you can create something or help somebody with them. So it's your sort of choice, and I think that artificial intelligence is the same. It's the means to an end.
Exactly. It's a tool that it's up to us whether we can use it in a productive way or in a destructive way. Here about the labor markets, because this is an important issue, it looks like we know from academic research on other countries that all type of jobs that are include repetition are the ones that are going to be affected more by the new technology.
Because it can learn.
Because artificial intelligence can learn, and if you do exactly the same thing every day, artificial intelligence can replace somebody who is doing a very repetitive type of work.
So we will go back to creative work and craft work and stuff like that? Or we will focus more on values, maybe on social studies?
Well, the repetitive type of works that people might do could be replaced by the new technology, and this obviously would allow people to do something more creative in more than one dimension. So I'm saying that because people are usually afraid of new technologies and makes them insecure.
And even of the big data sets, a lot of people are afraid because the internet knows so much about them. And this is also very valuable resource for companies that can, or not just companies, governments, policymakers, they can make good decisions by having all this data that they do, but they can also probably affect how people think and function. Where is the balance in these two, and is there balance, or it's just a choice? No, the information is out there.
There is a balance, and history can help us when it comes to assessing what is the impact of new technology going to be in the economy, especially when it comes to employment. We know from previous technological advances that we observe in the last 2 centuries that answering the question, will some people lose their jobs? The answer is probably some people are going to lose their jobs. And these are usually people that are doing repetitive type of work, as I said earlier, and people that type jobs that did not require a lot of training. There are 2 forces that are cancel each other. You have the type of jobs that are relatively that are repetitive, that some jobs are going to be lost, but there are new jobs that are created in the same time. Maybe not with the same rate, but new technologies usually replace some type of jobs, but new jobs are created in the same time. So we're expecting that this process is going to remain like this. In this case, artificial intelligence could make some of the things that we were spending a lot of time in the past doing relatively easy for us.
Do we need to think about 4 hours working days and so on and so forth?
It could, in places where there are where production has a lot of machines, this is something people can consider. 4 days per week. It has been considered and discussed in the past in advanced industrialized countries. Obviously, this remains to be seen, but in the services sector, this is probably not the case because the technology makes people stick to their phones for a very long hours, and we have to claim our 8-hour work back because some of the people that work in services have to reply to emails all day, etc. This is an important question about the work-to-life balance
Yes.
that we need to be aware of. I just wanted to stress that technology usually makes people uncertain and insecure, but the lessons from the past say that the cost that we have to pay is usually significantly lower than we think.
Yes.
And this is concentrated around jobs that are very, very repetitive and usually lower skill type of jobs.
Yes, so we should try to educate people on the dangers that they might face and try to find probably ways to sort of give them a bigger, broader skill set so that they can easily go from one job to another. I want to end this on a good note. Can big data save lives? You said that it can be very personalized. On one of your lectures, you showed your smartwatch explaining that this gets your personal data, but can it also save your life? Can it predict probability of stroke if you have data on a lot of people having a watch and how it happened for them? Can it save lives?
Yeah, it can be a very, very important tool for people and for a health system to monitor what is happening, because you can actually see and get information not from one or two or three persons, but we're talking about very, very big numbers. The health type of research with the big data is going to provide to societies a unique opportunity to see how specific diseases and issues are concerned. And I would say that this is a very, very big window of opportunity to learn more things and to improve the health quality in societies that have already the infrastructure to do that. So the short answer is yes, this is a big opportunity for societies. Big data are not is not an issue without cost. We have to be very careful and alert as citizens of what type of data firms and the government have, but it's also a very big opportunity to improve our lives, and we should try and think of ways of making our lives better once technology allows us to do this.
Thank you very much, Professor Theo, and I really hope that we brought people together to talk about the global mutual challenges that we face, rather than about these other topics that sometimes divide us.
Okay, thank you very much, and I really enjoyed the discussion, and let me say a very big thank you to everybody.